It started with an unplanned trip. I wasn't supposed to be in Boston, let alone checking into a second-rate hotel on the outskirts of the city. But life has a way of pushing you where you don't want to be, doesn't it? The lobby smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic. The concierge, a thin man with sunken eyes and a name tag that read Daniel, handed me a key without a smile, barely looking at me as he muttered, "Room 304. I noticed his hands were trembling. The elevator ride felt like a scene from an old Hitchcock film. It groaned and rattled as it climbed, the fluorescent lights flickering sporadically. By the time the doors slid open on the 3rd floor, my nerves were already frayed. But then I saw it. The hallway stretched out like a dimly lit maze, carpet worn down in irregular patterns, and the air was heavy, thick, almost like it was trying to suffocate me. Room 304 was at the very end. I stood outside the door for a moment, the faint scent of copper lingering in the air. The key turned with a click, and as I pushed the door open, a wave of unease hit me. The room wasn't much to look at. Standard cheap hotel setup. A bed, a dresser with an old TV, and a small table with a single chair. The window was open a crack, letting in a damp breeze. But something felt wrong, like I wasn't alone. I told myself it was just my imagination. I'd been driving for hours, my mind playing tricks on me. But as I sat on the edge of the bed, flipping through channels on the staticky TV, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Then I heard it. Faint whisper. It wasn't coming from the hallway or outside the window. It was inside the room. The whisper wasn't distinct at first, more like a breath brushing against my ear. I froze, the TV remote slipping out of my hand and clattering onto the floor. My heart raced as I strained to listen. There it was again. This time, it sounded like words, soft but urgent. "Help me?" The voice was faint, but it came from nowhere and everywhere at once. My eyes darted around the room. The dresser, the closet, under the bed. Nothing. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it into every shadowed corner. The whisper stopped, leaving only the faint hum of the TV behind. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself. I'd been on the road too long. Sleep deprivation, maybe. That had to be it. Still, I checked the lock on the door and shoved a chair under the handle for good measure. Just as I settled back onto the bed, I heard a soft knock. It wasn't at the door. The sound came from the wall. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, deliberate. I stared at the wallpapered surface separating my room from the one next door. I pressed my ear to the wall, holding my breath. First silence. Then a shuffle like feet scuffing against carpet. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking. "Is someone there?" For a moment, I thought I imagined the answer. Yes. It was a woman's voice, so faint it was barely audible. I recoiled from the wall. I fumbled for the hotel phone and called the front desk. Daniel picked up after several rings. "Front desk," he said, his voice flat. "There's someone in the room next to mine, and—" "No," Daniel interrupted sharply. "There's no one staying in 306. I froze, staring at the wall. "Are you sure? I'm hearing—" "Listen," he said, cutting me off again, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. "Stay in your room. Don't—" The line went dead. Before I could process his cryptic warning, the knock came again. But this time it was louder and closer. It wasn't the wall anymore. It was the closet. Knock, knock, knock. I turned to the closet door, my flashlight trembling in my hand. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice cracking. No answer. I approached slowly, every step heavier than the last. My hand reached out to the knob, slick with sweat. The air felt colder, the faint metallic smell growing stronger. I counted to 3 under my breath, then yanked the door open. Empty. Just a few hangers swaying on the rod. That's when I heard the whisper again, this time, right behind me. "Don't look under the bed." I spun around, the flashlight beam darting wildly across the room. My heart hammered in my chest as the words echoed in my mind. My instinct screamed to listen, to leave it alone. But curiosity, or maybe sheer terror, pushed me forward. I crouched down slowly, lowering the flashlight toward the dark void beneath the bed. My breath caught in my throat when the beam landed on a pair of wide, unblinking eyes staring back at me. The whisper came again, louder this time. Too late. I scrambled backward, my head slamming against the dresser as the flashlight clattered to the floor. The beam flickered wildly, but those eyes, the ones under the bed, never wavered. They just stared, unblinking, unfeeling, like they didn't belong to something human. Then something moved. A hand. No, not a hand. Something twisted, gnarled, and impossibly long shot out from under the bed. It didn't grab me, not at first. Instead, it dragged its jagged nails across the floor, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. It was slow, deliberate, as if savoring the fear radiating off me. Couldn't scream. Couldn't move. My body was locked in place, pinned by terror. And then it spoke again. Not a whisper this time. A rasping, guttural voice that filled the room. "You should have listened." The hand lunged, clawing at my ankle. That was enough to snap me out of my paralysis. I kicked wildly, my heel connecting with something solid. The thing under the bed let out a guttural screech, and I scrambled to my feet, yanking the chair away from the door and throwing it open. The hallway was pitch black. The flickering light that had barely illuminated it earlier was gone. I could hear the faint hum of something, like static, growing louder the further I stepped into the corridor. My breath came in shallow gasps as I looked back at the open door to my room. The air inside seemed darker, heavier, as if something was pulling the light into it. I wasn't going back in there, but as I turned to run, I saw her, a woman at the far end of the hallway, standing perfectly still. She was backlit by the faint glow of an emergency exit sign, her face obscured in shadow. Her head tilted slightly, as if she were studying me. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice trembling. I need help. Something's in my room." She didn't respond. She just stood there, unmoving. Then, slowly, she raised her arm and pointed, behind me. I froze, the hairs on my neck standing on end. I didn't want to look. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. But something about her expression, the way her head tilted even further, compelled me. Slowly, I turned my head. The hallway behind me wasn't empty anymore. Something was crawling out of my room. Its body was impossibly thin. The skin stretched taut over bones that jutted out at unnatural angles. Its head was too large for its neck, lolling slightly as it moved. And its eyes, those same wide, unblinking eyes I'd seen under the bed, were locked on me. It moved on all fours, but not like an animal. Its joints bent the wrong way, and every step was accompanied by a wet, cracking sound, like breaking branches. I stumbled back, my chest heaving as I turned to run toward the emergency exit. The woman was gone now, the hallway empty, but I didn't care. I bolted, my feet pounding against the worn carpet as the thing behind me let out a high-pitched wail that echoed off the walls. I reached the stairwell and threw the door open, the metal handle icy cold against my skin. The stairs spiraled downward, the dim glow of emergency lights barely illuminating the steps. I took them two at a time, the sound of that thing's wet, scraping movements growing louder behind me. By the time I reached the ground floor, I was drenched in sweat, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I burst into the lobby, expecting to see Daniel at the front desk, or anyone, really. But the space was empty. No, not empty. The air was wrong here too. Thicker, colder. The faint metallic smell was stronger now, almost overwhelming. I backed away from the desk, my eyes darting around the room. And that's when I noticed the mirrors. They lined the walls, old and cracked, their silver backing peeling away in places. But the reflections, they weren't right. The lobby was empty, but in the mirrors, I could see people. Dozens of them. Men, women, children, all standing motionless, staring at me with hollow eyes. And then, one by one, they started to move. In the mirrors, their heads tilted at unnatural angles, their mouths opening in silent screams. I stumbled back, my foot catching on the edge of a rug. I fell hard, my head smacking against the cold tile floor. Stars danced in my vision, but as I blinked them away, I realized something. The people in the mirrors, they weren't just moving. They were stepping out. The first one emerged slowly, its hand pressing against the glass as if testing the boundary. The surface of the mirror rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. Then its arm broke through, pale and gaunt, with fingers impossibly long and sharp. Its head followed, twisted sideways, the neck cracking and popping as it pulled itself into the lobby. I scrambled backward, my palms scraping against the cold floor, my eyes locked on the creature. It wasn't fully human. Its skin was a sickly gray, stretched tight over bones that didn't align correctly. Its mouth opened too wide, revealing jagged teeth, and its hollow eyes fixed on me with a hunger I could feel in my chest. Behind it, more figures pressed against the mirrors, their faces smearing the glass as they tried to push through. The air grew colder, the metallic tang stronger. I could hear them moaning, guttural and desperate, as they clawed their way into my reality. I had to move. My body screamed in protest as I forced myself to stand, my head pounding from the fall. The first creature was fully out now, crouched low like an animal ready to pounce. Its head twitched violently, and its mouth curled into a grin that sent ice through my veins. "Stay back," I shouted, though my voice sounded small and fragile in the cavernous lobby. I grabbed a metal lamp from a nearby table and swung it wildly, the base scraping across the floor. The creature flinched but didn't retreat. It cocked its head, as if studying me, before taking a deliberate step forward. Behind it, the others were coming through. 5, 6, maybe more. Their movements were jerky, wrong, like puppets controlled by unseen strings. I couldn't stay here. I turned and bolted toward the front doors, praying they weren't locked. But as I reached the glass doors, I stopped cold. Outside wasn't the parking lot or the street. It wasn't even the hotel's facade. The world beyond the doors was black. Endless, suffocating black. I pressed my hand to the glass, my heart sinking as I realized there was nothing there. Just void. It was as if the hotel had been cut off from reality, floating in some dark limbo. A low growl brought me back to the present. I turned to see the first creature lunging at me. I barely managed to dodge, the lamp in my hands swinging wildly and catching it across the side of the head. It screeched and stumbled, its limbs flailing unnaturally. I didn't wait to see if it would recover. I ran, sprinting toward the staircase leading down to the basement. The steps groaned under my weight as I descended, the air growing colder with each step. The basement was my only option. Maybe there was another way out, an access door, a window, anything. The basement was worse. The moment I stepped off the last stair, I was hit by an overwhelming sense of dread. The space was massive, much larger than it should have been, with walls that stretched into darkness. The floor was concrete, cracked and stained with something dark and sticky. The faint hum of electricity buzzed in the air, accompanied by a low, rhythmic thumping. And then I saw it. At the center of the room stood a massive mirror, much larger than the ones in the lobby. It was ornate, framed in dark, twisted wood that seemed to writhe and shift in the dim light. The surface of the mirror wasn't reflective. It was alive, swirling with a dark, viscous substance that pulsed and rippled like it was breathing. Figures moved within the mirror, dozens of them, their faces pressed against the surface, their mouths open in silent screams. I recognized some of them, the woman from the hallway, the man who had crawled out from under my bed. They weren't just images. They were trapped, and I was next. The thumping grew louder, and I turned to see the creatures from the lobby pouring down the staircase. Their movements were faster now, more frantic, as if the mirror was calling them. I backed away, my eyes darting around the room for anything I could use to defend myself. That's when I noticed the writing on the floor, faint but unmistakable. A circle of symbols and runes, scrawled in what looked like blood, surrounded the mirror. It pulsed faintly, the lines glowing a deep crimson. "Break the circle," a voice whispered, soft and desperate, came from everywhere and nowhere. "You have to break the circle." The creatures were closing in, their distorted faces lit by the faint glow of the runes. My heart thundered in my chest as I realized what the voice meant. The circle was keeping the mirror contained. If I broke it, whatever was inside would be free. But so would I. The first creature lunged, its claws slicing through the air. I ducked, grabbing a jagged piece of concrete from the floor and slamming it into the glowing runes. The circle cracked, the light flickering like a dying flame. The mirror began to ripple violently, the figures inside thrashing as the dark substance churned. The creatures shrieked, their bodies convulsing as the room filled with a deafening roar. I stumbled back, covering my ears as the mirror exploded, shards of dark glass shooting out like shrapnel. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, the basement was empty. The creatures, the mirror, the symbols, gone. The air was still and cold, the only sound my own ragged breathing. I staggered up the stairs, my legs trembling with every step. The lobby was empty too, the mirrors cracked and lifeless. Outside, through the glass doors, I could see the faint glow of the city. The void was gone, but as I stepped outside, I caught my reflection in the cracked glass. And for just a moment, the face staring back wasn't mine. I didn't go home right away. How could I? My body was trembling, my mind racing with the impossible things I'd seen. Instead, I parked my car on a quiet street a few blocks away and sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. The face in the glass. My asterisk face, but not, was burned into my brain. Its eyes were darker, hollow, like the void I'd seen outside the hotel. And that smile, it wasn't mine. It was too wide, too sharp, like it knew something I didn't. For hours, I sat there in my car, watching the sun rise over the city. The normalcy of morning life, the joggers, the people walking their dogs, felt surreal, like I'd crossed over into a world that was no longer mine. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see something staring back at me. But it was just my reflection, tired, pale, and haunted. I thought about calling someone, but what would I say? Hey, I just spent the night in a hotel that might be some kind of portal to hell? No one would believe me. Hell, I barely believed myself. By mid-morning, I'd convinced myself it was over. Whatever had happened in that hotel, I'd survived it. I was safe now. I just needed to get back to my life. Pretend this was all a bad dream. I decided to head home, take a shower, and try to forget. But the moment I walked through my apartment door, I knew something was wrong. The air inside felt heavy, like it did in the hotel lobby. The faint metallic smell was there too, clinging to everything. I dropped my keys on the counter and froze. Someone had been here. It wasn't obvious at first. Nothing was out of place, nothing stolen. But the feeling was unmistakable. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I stepped into the living room. That's when I saw it. A mirror. It wasn't mine. I didn't own a mirror like this, tall, with an ornate black frame that twisted like gnarled branches. It was propped up against the far wall directly across from the couch. I approached it slowly, my stomach twisting in knots. The surface of the glass wasn't reflective. It was dark, swirling faintly, like the mirror in the basement of the hotel. My own reflection didn't appear until I was inches away. And when it did, my blood ran cold. It wasn't me. Not entirely. The figure in the mirror wore my face, but its movements didn't match mine. When I stepped back, it leaned forward. When I tilted my head, it kept staring straight ahead. And then it smiled, that same wide, sharp smile I'd seen in the hotel. The whisper came again. "Let me out!" I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the coffee table. The figure pressed its hands against the glass, its mouth moving in silent words I couldn't understand. Then the glass rippled, like it had in the hotel, and a crack spread across the surface. I turned and ran for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I grabbed the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. It was locked. I twisted it harder, pulling and yanking, but it wouldn't budge. Behind me, I heard the faint sound of glass breaking. "Don't look," I muttered to myself. "Just don't look." But I couldn't help it. When I turned, the figure was gone. The mirror was empty, the glass still rippling faintly like water disturbed by a pebble. The room was silent, but I could feel it. Asterisk something asterisk. Standing behind me. A hand brushed against my shoulder, cold and skeletal. "Let me show you," the voice whispered, directly in my ear. I don't remember much after that. There was a sensation of falling, like I was being pulled backward into the mirror. I tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the void. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness, suffocating and endless. And then I woke up. I was lying on the floor of my living room, the morning light streaming through the windows. The mirror was gone. The air felt normal again. No heaviness, no metallic smell. It was like nothing had happened. But when I got up and looked at myself in the hallway mirror, I noticed something. My reflection smiled a second too late, and its eyes, just for a moment, weren't mine. I didn't leave my apartment for days. Every sound felt amplified. Every shadow seemed to stretch just a little too far, and every reflective surface became a silent threat. I covered all the mirrors in my place, bathroom, bedroom, even the one on my old wardrobe. I couldn't bear to look at myself anymore, not after what I'd seen. But avoiding mirrors didn't help. The whispers started again. At first, they came at night, faint and fleeting, just as I was about to fall asleep. "Let me out." I told myself it was just my imagination, a leftover trauma from the hotel. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. By the third night, I could hear them in every room of my apartment, echoing from the walls, the windows, the covered mirrors. They weren't faint anymore. They were clear, almost conversational. "Why are you hiding? You know I'm still here." I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I wasn't alone. Like something was standing over me, watching, waiting. By morning, I was a wreck. Shaking, paranoid, and desperate for answers. I decided to go back to the hotel. I know how that sounds. Why would I go back to the place that started all of this? But I had to. I couldn't live like this anymore, not knowing what had happened, not knowing what was still following me. Maybe if I confronted it, whatever it was, I could end this nightmare. When I arrived, the hotel looked different. The parking lot was empty, the lights in the lobby dim. The faint metallic smell hit me the moment I stepped inside, stronger than before. The concierge desk was abandoned, and the air was unnervingly still. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. "Is anyone here?" No answer. I made my way to the elevator, the same one I'd taken to room 304. The buttons were covered in a thin layer of dust, but they still lit up when I pressed 3. The ride up felt even slower this time, the elevator groaning and shuddering with every passing second. When the doors opened, the hallway was just as I remembered, dim, endless, and suffocating. Room 304 was at the end, its door slightly ajar. My heart pounded as I approached, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the room was exactly as I'd left it. The bed was unmade, the chair still propped under the door handle. But something was different. The air was colder, the metallic smell almost choking now. And there, in the center of the room, stood a mirror. It wasn't like the ones I'd seen before. This one was massive, its frame carved with intricate symbols that seemed to writhe and shift as I approached. The glass was dark, swirling faintly, just like the mirror in the basement. I felt drawn to it like a moth to a flame. My reflection appeared as I got closer, but it wasn't alone. Behind me, in the glass, I saw shapes, shadows moving and twisting, their forms too vague to make out. And then one of them stepped forward. It was me, or at least it looked like me, but its eyes were wrong, too dark, too deep. Its movements didn't match mine, just like before. It smiled, that same too wide grin that sent chills down my spine. "You can't hide forever," it said, its voice echoing inside my head. "You opened the door. Now it's your turn." "My turn for what?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "To take my place." Before I could react, the glass rippled, and the reflection lunged at me. I stumbled back, falling to the floor as its hand reached out, inches from my face. I scrambled away, But the mirror wasn't just a mirror anymore. It was a doorway, and things were coming through. Hands, faces, twisted and grotesque, clawed their way out of the glass. Their whispers filled the room, overlapping and deafening. "Let us out! Let us out!" I grabbed the closest thing I could, a lamp from the nightstand, and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered, the sound piercing and otherworldly. The figures screamed as the shards fell, their forms dissolving into smoke. And then, silence. I stood there, shaking, staring at the broken mirror. The air was still again, the metallic smell fading. It was over. At least I thought it was. But as I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something in the largest shard of glass still intact on the floor. My reflection. It wasn't smiling this time. It was screaming. I bolted out of the hotel like my life depended on it. And maybe it did. The moment I hit the street, I gasped for air, the cool wind biting against my skin. But the unease didn't leave me. It clung to me like a second skin, heavy and suffocating. I didn't dare look back. The city around me felt wrong. The streets were quieter than they should have been for that time of night. The lights in the buildings flickered in unison, like a pulse, and every shadow seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. I flagged down the first cab I saw and practically threw myself into the back seat. "Just drive," I said, my voice shaking. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his face unreadable. "Where to?" "Anywhere," I snapped. "Just get me out of here." He didn't ask any more questions. The cab pulled away from the curb, and I slumped back into the seat, my hands trembling. I thought I was safe, that I'd escaped whatever had been in that hotel. But as the cab sped through the city, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The driver wasn't casting a reflection. I sat up straighter, my breath catching in my throat. The rearview mirror showed the empty back seat where I should have been. My hands instinctively went to my face, touching my cheeks, my eyes, as if to confirm I was still real. But the mirror told a different story. "What's wrong?" the driver asked, his voice calm and eerily even. I tried to think of an answer, but the words wouldn't come. My chest tightened as panic set in. The city outside the windows started to blur, the lights stretching into long, distorted streaks. It felt like the cab was moving too fast, but when I looked at the speedometer, it was stuck at 0. "Where are we going?" I finally managed to choke out. The driver didn't answer right away. He just smiled, his lips curling in that same too-wide grin I'd seen in the mirror. "You're almost home," he said. The cab came to a sudden stop, the tires screeching against the pavement. I looked out the window and froze. We weren't anywhere near my apartment. The street was completely dark, the buildings around us abandoned and crumbling. And in the middle of the road, bathed in the faint glow of a flickering streetlight, was another mirror. I recognized it instantly, the same ornate, twisting frame, the same swirling darkness in the glass. My stomach churned as the whispers started again, faint at first but growing louder, more insistent. "Let us out! Let us out!" I threw open the door and stumbled out of the cab, my legs weak and unsteady. The driver didn't try to stop me. He just sat there watching, his grin never faltering. The mirror loomed ahead of me, impossibly tall and suffocating in its presence. I tried to back away, but my feet wouldn't move. The whispers were inside my head now, drowning out every thought. "You can't run," the voice from the mirror said. My voice. "You let us in. It's your turn." The glass rippled, and shadows began to emerge, twisting and writhing as they clawed their way out. I turned to run, but the driver's voice stopped me cold. "Don't fight it," he said, stepping out of the cab. "It's easier that way." I spun around to face him, my heart pounding. His face was wrong now, stretched and distorted, his eyes black pits that seemed to pull me in. He tilted his head, and for a brief moment, I saw something familiar in his features. It was me. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "This isn't real." But it was. The shadows were closing in, their whispers deafening, their twisted forms reaching for me. I felt their cold hands on my skin, pulling, dragging me toward the mirror. I screamed, but no sound came out. And then, just as I was about to be swallowed by the darkness, I remembered the lamp. The lamp I'd used to shatter the mirror in the hotel. It had worked before. Maybe it could work again. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing against my keys. With all the strength I had left, I pulled them out and hurled them at the mirror. The keys struck the glass, and for a moment, everything froze. The mirror cracked. The shadows recoiled, their forms dissolving into smoke. The driver let out an ear-piercing shriek, his body contorting and collapsing into itself. The whispers stopped, the air grew still, and the world around me seemed to stabilize. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the middle of an empty street. The cab was gone. The mirror was gone. The only sound was the distant hum of the city. It was over, or so I thought. When I got home, I found the same mirror waiting for me in my living room. The cracks I'd made in its surface had healed. And this time, my reflection wasn't in it at all. I didn't go inside. Couldn't. My front door stood open, the faint glow of my living room spilling out into the hallway, but it felt like a trap. The mirror was there, waiting, and the absence of my reflection in it felt like a void sucking the air from the space. I stood frozen on the threshold, my mind racing. If my reflection wasn't in the mirror anymore, where was it? And more importantly, what was? Then I heard it. The sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing from inside my apartment. They weren't mine. Something was moving around in there. I held my breath, straining to listen as the sound grew louder, closer, and then it stopped. A voice called out, chilling in its familiarity. "Why don't you come in? You've already let us in once." It was my voice, mocking, but with an edge of malice that made my skin crawl. I took a step back, my legs trembling beneath me. "What do you want?" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. The voice laughed, low and guttural, echoing strangely in the silence. "Want? You already gave me what I wanted. I have your face, your voice, and soon your life." I turned and ran. Down the hall, out the building, onto the empty street. I didn't stop until I was blocks away, the cold night air biting at my skin. My chest burned, my lungs screaming for air, but I didn't dare slow down. I had no idea where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't stay. Eventually, I found myself outside an all-night diner. The warm glow of its neon sign felt like a lifeline, a tether to reality in the chaos that had consumed my world. I stumbled inside, the bell above the door jingling softly, and collapsed into a booth near the window. A waitress appeared, her face kind but weary. "You okay, Han?" she asked, setting down a menu. I nodded weakly, though I was far from okay. "Coffee," I croaked. "Black." She gave me a concerned look but didn't press. As she walked away, I caught my reflection in the diner's window. It was faint, distorted by the streetlights outside, but it was there. My face, my eyes, my reflection. For a brief, fleeting moment, I felt relief. Maybe I'd escaped. Maybe it was over. Then the lights in the diner flickered. I froze, my eyes darting around the room. The other patrons didn't seem to notice. A man at the counter kept reading his newspaper. A couple in the corner whispered to each other over their coffee. Everything looked normal, but it didn't feel normal. The lights flickered again, and this time, the metallic smell returned. Faint but unmistakable. My stomach churned as I glanced back at the window. My reflection was gone. The whispers started again. "Did you really think you could run?" I spun around, my heart racing, but no one in the diner seemed to have noticed the voice. It was like I was the only one who could hear it. The waitress returned with my coffee, her expression neutral, almost bored, as she set it down in front of me. "Thanks," I mumbled, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded and walked away, but as she did, I caught a glimpse of something in the reflective surface of the coffee pot she carried. My reflection was in there, but it wasn't sitting in the booth. It was standing behind me. I whipped around, but there was nothing there. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, filling my head until I thought I'd scream. You can't run. You can't hide. We're everywhere. I shoved the coffee cup aside and bolted for the door. The patrons didn't even look up as I ran past, their faces eerily blank, their movements too still. It was like they were frozen, or worse, like they weren't real at all. When I stepped outside, the world was wrong again. The streets were empty, the buildings dark. The only light came from the diner behind me, its neon sign flickering weakly. I turned to look back, and my heart sank. The reflection in the diner's window wasn't mine. It was them. All of them. The shadows, the creatures, the thing that had my face. They were staring at me, their hollow eyes filled with malice, their two wide smiles stretching impossibly far. One of them raised a hand, pressing it against the glass, and then they all started to move. Toward me, the glass began to ripple, just like the mirrors in the hotel. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface as the shadows pushed through, their distorted forms stretching toward me. I ran, again, but no matter how far I went, the whispers followed, louder and louder, until they drowned out everything else. My reflection appeared everywhere, in puddles, in shop windows, in the chrome of parked cars. It was always there, always watching, and always wrong. I don't know how long I've been running now. Days? Weeks? I haven't been home. I can't go back. Every time I think I'm safe, I catch a glimpse of them, of me, in some reflective surface. And every time, they're closer. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. I can feel them closing in, their whispers filling my head, their eyes staring back at me from every shadow. If you're reading this and you ever see a mirror like the one I've described, don't go near it. Don't touch it. Don't look into it. Because if you do, you might never see your reflection again. I don't remember the exact moment I gave up running. Maybe it was the exhaustion, the sleepless nights, or the growing realization that no matter where I went, they would always find me. The whispers never stopped. The shadows never stopped moving. Every reflective surface became a door, a window, a portal through which they could watch me. I ended up in a rundown motel far outside the city. The kind of place no one asks questions. The kind of place where even the mirrors are so stained and warped they hardly show a proper reflection. It felt safer than anywhere else I'd been, though safe had lost all meaning by then. The room was small, just a bed, a chair, and a bathroom with a cracked mirror above the sink. I didn't cover it this time. What was the point? I'd see them anyway. I always did. That night, I stared at the mirror for hours. My reflection stared back. It looked tired, hollow, almost like it pitied me. I thought about smashing it, but I knew better by now. Breaking the mirrors didn't stop them. It just made it worse. The whispers were louder than ever, a cacophony of voices overlapping in my head. They were speaking now, not just to me but to each other. Planning, scheming, waiting. "You're so close," one of them said. "You'll be one of us soon." I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and broken. "What do you want from me?" I shouted at the mirror. My reflection didn't answer. It just watched, its head tilting slightly, its mouth curling into that horrible smile. "You already know," the voice replied, this time louder, clearer. It wasn't coming from the mirror anymore. It was coming from inside me. "We want what you gave away. Your place." My place? I didn't understand. None of this made sense. But then, like a puzzle snapping into place, it hit me. That night in the hotel. The mirror. The things inside it. They hadn't just tried to take me, they did. When I shattered that first mirror, I didn't escape. I didn't save myself. I left something behind. Or maybe I took something with me. Either way, I wasn't whole anymore. And neither were they. I was their unfinished business. The thought terrified me more than anything else. I wasn't being hunted, I was being called back. They didn't just want to torment me. They wanted to complete me. I don't know what possessed me, but I stood up and walked to the mirror in the bathroom. The reflection moved with me, mimicking my every move, but its eyes burned with something new this time. Hunger. Desperation. "You want me?" I whispered. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to hold its gaze. "Fine. Let's finish this." The reflection's smile widened, its teeth sharp and glinting in the dim light. The whispers grew louder, filling the room, the air thick with static and cold. I reached out and placed my hand against the glass. It was ice cold, like touching death itself. The reflection did the same, its hand meeting mine on the other side. For a moment, everything was silent, still, and then the glass began to ripple. The room fell away. The walls, the bed, the world around me dissolved into darkness. I was standing in a void now, the mirror the only solid thing in this endless black space. My reflection stared back at me, and for the first time it spoke. "You shouldn't have come back." It stepped forward, its hand reaching out, and this time it wasn't glass between us. It grabbed my arm, its grip impossibly strong, and pulled. I stumbled forward into the void, into the mirror. The cold was unbearable, seeping into my bones, my skin, my very soul. I screamed, but no sound came out. The reflection laughed, its voice echoing in the emptiness. "It's over now," it said. "You're ours." And then I fell. I don't know how long I was falling. Could have been seconds, or it could have been years. When I finally hit the ground, it wasn't solid. It was like standing on the surface of a frozen lake, the dark glass beneath me stretching out in all directions. And there they were, the shadows, the whispers, the faces I'd seen in the mirrors, distorted and broken, crawling toward me on all sides. They surrounded me, their hollow eyes fixed on mine, their voices overlapping in a terrible, deafening symphony. "You're home now," they said. I tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The glass beneath my feet cracked with every step, the sound sharp and echoing. I looked down and saw my reflection, staring up at me from the fractured surface. Only it wasn't scared. It wasn't me. It was smiling. The glass shattered, and I fell again. When I woke up, I was in my apartment. The mirrors were gone. The whispers were gone. The metallic smell was gone. But when I looked into the bathroom mirror, my reflection didn't move. It just stared at me, its eyes hollow and dark, its mouth curling into that too wide grin. And then it whispered, "Your turn." After that moment, everything changed. My reflection didn't leave the mirror, but I could feel it watching, waiting. It followed me everywhere, not just in the bathroom, but in every surface that could even vaguely reflect. A window, puddle, even the dull shine of a spoon. And every time I caught a glimpse, it was there, unmoving, grinning. Days turned into weeks, and my grip on reality unraveled. I tried everything, covering the mirrors, smashing reflective surfaces, even moving to a new apartment. But no matter where I went, it was always there, waiting in the background like a predator stalking its prey. The whispers came back, too, faint at first but growing louder each night, building to a crescendo that left me curled in the corner of my bedroom, clutching my ears. And then the knocking started. It came from inside the mirrors. A slow, deliberate tap-tap-tap, like fingers rapping on glass. The first time I heard it, I froze, my chest tightening as if my lungs had forgotten how to work. I stared at the covered bathroom mirror, the knocking relentless. When I finally pulled the sheet away, I saw it, my reflection, grinning wider than ever, its hand pressed against the other side of the glass. "Let me out," it whispered. "No," I said, my voice shaking. "I won't," tilted its head, mocking me. "You're already broken. You can't stop us." I wanted to run, to smash the mirror and rid myself of it for good. But I knew better now. Breaking the mirror wouldn't help. It would only make them stronger. So I left the apartment that night, leaving every light on and every door unlocked. I didn't care anymore. I just needed to get away. I checked into a hotel, a different one this time, far away from the city. The kind of place where the mirrors were small, cracked, and easy to avoid. I thought I'd finally found a moment of peace. I thought I was safe. Until the dream. It was the same one I'd had at the start of all this. I was standing in front of a mirror, staring at my reflection. Only this time I wasn't alone. The shadowy figures stood behind me, their twisted faces stretching into hideous smiles. My reflection reached out, its hand pressing against the glass. "It's time," it said. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating, and that familiar metallic tang filled my nose. My hands trembled as I fumbled for the lamp on the nightstand, my fingers brushing against something cold and smooth. A mirror. I froze, my stomach sinking. I hadn't noticed it before. An old, oval-shaped mirror propped up on the desk across the room. The sheet I'd covered it with had slipped off in the night, and my reflection was there, waiting. It wasn't smiling this time. It was staring at me, unblinking. Its eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Pity. The knocking started again. Slow. Insistent. This time, though, it wasn't coming from the mirror. It was coming from the door. Knock. 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 I didn't move. My breath hitched as I stared at the door, the pale light of the moon casting long shadows across the room. The knocking came again, louder this time, more forceful. Who is it? I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Knock. 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 The air grew colder, the metallic smell almost choking now. I stood, my legs trembling, and took a step toward the door. The floor creaked beneath me, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. My hand reached for the doorknob, hesitating as the knocking continued. Faster now, more frantic. And then it stopped. I let out a shaky breath, relief washing over me. But just as I turned to sit back down, I saw it. The mirror on the desk had changed. My reflection wasn't there anymore. Something else was. It was the shadowy figure from before, its hollow eyes staring at me, its mouth twisted into a gaping void. It pressed its hand against the glass, the surface rippling like water. You're not free, it said. You'll never be free. The glass began to crack, spiderwebbing outward as the figure pushed harder, its hand breaking through. I stumbled back, my scream caught in my throat as it clawed its way out, its body twisting and contorting unnaturally. And then it stopped. For a moment, everything was still, silent. The figure stood there, its hollow eyes locked on mine, its presence filling the room with a suffocating weight. It tilted its head, and for the first time, I saw something in its expression that froze me in place. Recognition. You gave yourself to us? It said, its voice a low, guttural rasp. Now, it's your turn. The lights flickered, and the mirror exploded, shards flying in every direction. When I opened my eyes, I was alone. The figure was gone. The air was still. But the reflection in the largest shard of glass on the floor wasn't mine. It was smiling. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I left everything behind. My bag, my car, my old life, and ran. I don't know how far I went or how long I wandered. All I know is this. I'm not me anymore. I don't see my reflection in mirrors. When I pass by windows or shiny surfaces, I see them. The shadows, the figures, the thing that took my place. And they're always smiling, always watching. I can feel myself fading now. It's harder to remember who I was, harder to keep hold of my thoughts. Sometimes, when I look down at my hands, they don't look like mine anymore. If you're reading this, remember my story. Stay away from mirrors. Stay away from places that smell like metal. And whatever you do, never ever let them in. Because once you do, you'll never see your reflection again. And neither will anyone else.